It's a complex 81-page document that many are still trying to digest. Antonia Mills with UNBC's Department of First Nations Studies is ecstatic about the Supreme Court's ruling. Specializing in land claims research, she explains what today's ruling means.
It means that industry, even forestry, can't go and do whatever they want without the permission of the First Nation. The implications are that there has to be much more consultation with First Nations before industry takes action, and it's it will impact things like Enbridge and all kinds of activities on the traditional territory.
The ruling will help make First Nations voices heard.
It strengthens the opposition of First Nations. It even impacts the forestry.
James Gorman, President and CEO of the Council of Forest Industries, is currently interpreting the Supreme Court's decision and the implications it will have on the forestry industry. Gorman says the decision emphasizes the importance of working with First Nations and building on the relationships they've worked hard to establish over the past decades.
Many projects, such as the Northern Gateway pipeline project, is really put into question.
Ultimately, Terry Teague feels a ruling like this allows First Nations to be a part of the dialogue about resource development.
Right now, we are at the table, and industry and government needs our consent for any projects such as forestry, oil and gas, or mining.
While many First Nations are pleased with today's Supreme Court ruling, there is still fine print that needs to be considered. The Supreme Court of Canada declared title is not absolute, and economic development can only proceed if one of two conditions are met. The first is that a project must receive approval from the First Nation, and if approval is not received, then the Government of Canada must prove the project is essential to the public while fulfilling their moral obligation to the First Nation.
Hi there, I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
There's some things going right in the world, and let's talk about them, yes?
While there's so much going wrong, we'd like to have a little balance every now and then.
Right now we are working on things about Israel, Gaza, some of the important issues, and also a major report coming up on marijuana and some of the right directions we're going in anti-pope directions.
But in that last clip, we talked about the recent land title decision for Aboriginals here in BC, and that's having huge repercussions.
Yes, and the courts are stepping up to bat in one other realm too. It happened in Quebec. It's all about Wal-Mart. Check this out.
A decision released today by the Supreme Court of Canada sides with a group of former Wal-Mart employees. About 190 of them lost their jobs in 2005 when the company closed a store in Jonquière, Quebec. The workers were attempting to form a union at the time. The CBC's Alison Crawford explains.
This is a store that opened in Jonquière, Quebec in 2001. By all accounts, it was doing well financially. Things were looking good. There had been no talk about closing the store. In 2004, the 190 employees decided to form a union. And then 7 months later, collective bargaining had not been going well. An arbitrator was appointed to help resolve the impasse. And on that very same day the arbitrator was appointed, Wal-Mart announced it was shutting down the store, putting all 190 people out of work. So this went to the courts. And essentially, the arbitrator continue his work and eventually determined that Wal-Mart couldn't actually justify its decision to close the store and had thereby breached a section of the Quebec Labor Code. The workers at this Wal-Mart had gone to the Supreme Court twice before and lost, but on this specific point today, they had a different outcome. A lot of people think, oh, well, maybe the store has to reopen. That's not exactly the case. In 2009, the Supreme Court of Canada said that Wal-Mart was within its rights to close the store. Today was about this section of that labor code, which the question was whether after the certification of the union, the store had changed the conditions of employment. Wal-Mart said, well, employment isn't a condition of employment. Today, the Supreme Court of Canada rejected that argument and said, yes, in fact, they had breached that section of the labor code, and that given the evidence that Wal-Mart would have closed the store had its employees not unionized, it was reasonable to find that this closure was not exactly normal management practice. So now an arbitrator will have to look at this again and determine an award for all of those 190 employees. So it's not that Wal-Mart would never be able to close the store if it had unionized employees. It's about the process and if they do it correctly.
Okay, did we even introduce ourselves?
Well, in case we missed it, this is Radio Free Canada Video Radio. I'm Robert Nisbet.
I'm Darren Howard, and this is where we talk about the right thing. Sort of works out for everybody's favor. The two decisions, okay, starting off the show. talking about Wal-Mart, saying, hey, if you're going to form a union in Wal-Mart, you can't shut it down. Walmart gets the bionic wrist slap.
Yeah.
It's just awesome.
Of course, they're contesting the decision. They're not pleased.
Yes, of course they have to contest the decision. Interesting, though, the backlash coming out of the decision to award land to the natives right here in British Columbia.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if the BC Supreme Court thought that far ahead when they made that decision.
And of course, you know, the genocidal economy that's going on, not really down with the whole natives getting land thing, but of course, you know, that would just be logic, and capitalism doesn't work.
And of course, in an indication of the failure of the security state, U.S. Congress has decided that putting people on the U.S. no-fly list is unconstitutional.
So if you're on a no-fly list right now, like some people are, well, then there's actual hope here. Check this out.
The federal no-fly list preventing people on a watch list from flying aboard aircraft has been ruled unconstitutional by a federal judge. Judge Anna Brown, presiding over the U.S. District Court in Oregon, ruled the list provides no way for those listed to contest their status. The case was brought before the court by a group of 13 Muslims who were banned from flying. 4 of the plaintiffs are former members of the U.S. military. The American Civil Liberties Union claimed that the list violated due process, and the federal government contended individuals on the no-fly list can contest their inclusion by filing a case in a U.S. appeals court. The court ruled against the Justice Department, saying the policy does not adequately provide due process. In a 65-page ruling, Brown wrote, quote, "The court concludes international travel is not a mere convenience or luxury in this modern world. Indeed, for many, international travel is a necessary aspect of liberties sacred to members of a free society." The plaintiff must now be given notice of their status on the list and be provided with the information that led them to be banned from flying. Shayana Kadidal from the Center for Constitutional Rights said, quote, "Some sort of fair process must exist to challenge such a significant limit on freedom." California and Virginia recently issued rulings critical of laws regarding the no-fly list. Several civil rights organizations have also recently filed cases similar to the 2010 case that has now been decided by Judge Brown.
Okay, so now it's, is this mean we're going to be able to get on a plane?
Well, at least maybe they can at least tell you why you're on the no-fly list.
That would be nice. I know why I'm on the no-fly list. We do independent media. And, of course, trying to get Robert Nisbet on a CIA watch list. We don't have confirmation he's on the list yet, but Robert was saying the word bomb parts earlier.
And Al-Qaeda.
And Al-Qaeda, yes.
I love Osama.
Yeah. So that should get him on a list. Remember, vote for Robert Nisbet getting on a CIA watch list today. Condolisa Rice.
Oh my goodness, at least the youth of the American country is waking up. They're deciding they don't want to hear from war criminals anymore. And Condolisa Rice kind of ran into some interference when she was going for the commencement speech at Rutgers University.
At least we have a clip on it. Check this out.
While holding politicians accountable for their past is rare in the U.S., it's university students and faculty who are taking it on themselves to make sure officials are liable for their prior misdeeds. In a recent scandal at Rutgers University in New Jersey, students and teachers have been able to resist the participation of former U.S. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor to George this year's commencement ceremony, rising up against her involvement in the Iraq War and torture during the Bush administration's years. Rice was invited to Rutgers to give a speech for a fee of $35,000 and was supposed to receive an honorary Doctor of Laws degree at the school. However, resistance ensued. A petition was signed by over 375 Rutgers faculty members, saying they were outraged and offended by Rice being invited as keynote speaker and that her participation would dishonor the school. The petition explains that Rice Rice played a key role in the campaign of distortion and lies surrounding the Iraq War, and that she was involved in allowing torture tactic policies to be implemented during that time. The Rutgers petition described Rice as one of the participants in war crimes during the Bush era. About 50 students held a sit-in at the university, which they dubbed as one of the largest in Rutgers history. A protest of about 100 students was also held with demands to not have Condolisa Rice come to the school. Even though the president of Rutgers declined to disinvite the former Secretary of State, Rice herself withdrew from participating, posting on her Facebook page that she does not wish to distract what's intended to be a joyous ceremony. She did, however, defend her record and said she was honored to have served her country. This is the latest of a handful of examples of former political figures continuing to face criticism for their actions in office. Activist student protests and events demanding accountability for political figures who haven't had to answer for actions criticized in the U.S. and around the world are expected to continue to let politicians know that they still want justice.
I'm still promoting the fact that Robert gets on a CIA list, but Condolisa Rice not being able to...
Well, she is a war criminal. I mean, she is responsible for what went on in Iraq, and it's even responsible for what's going on in Iraq to this very day.
And if you ever have a question on whether or not activism works, realize that George W. Bush has an extraordinary problem trying to speak anywhere in North America right now because we all know the BS is true.
Well, he has a hard time speaking anyway because, you know, he lacks in certain intelligence areas.
Yeah, I know, and if the teleprompter isn't running correctly, of course we can look at Obama for that one too. Right here.
One more Supreme Court decision we had concerning the cuts to the refugee health care program.
Yeah, we could almost call this the courts get it right, but we couldn't find two other clips. But this is progress getting made. Check this out.
For years, Peter Vihos has watched a decline in his bee population, and he believes it's linked to a certain pesticide.
No doubt, in my opinion, that neonics have played a huge role.
Also known as neonicotinoids, the pesticide is commonly used on corn and soya crops. It can be sprayed on the plants or used to coat the seed before planting. A new study suggests some neonics are 5,000 to 10,000 times more toxic to bees than DDT.
It's beyond a wake-up call now. It's a source of concern for a large part of the scientific community.
Bees pollinate up to 40% of the crops we consume, so if they're dying off, humans will feel the sting of a massive food shortage. So how exactly does the pesticide harm the bees? Well, the study found it affects their navigation, their ability to collect food, makes them less resistant to diseases, and any exposed colonies will produce significantly fewer queen bees. That can lead to a collapsed colony, or as Vihos has seen, a weak queen bee being superseded, altering the centuries-old structure. The Pesticide Trade Group argues this report is a literature review, not a full field study. And while the EU banned neonics, other jurisdictions have not.
Both Australia and the UK, their regulatory bodies who review pesticides, their conclusions are that neonics are not a primary cause of any bee health issues.
Now, our country hasn't imposed a ban, and Health Canada is conducting its own studies, but nothing will be done before 2015. And Vihos worries by that time, it could be too late. Mike Lecuteur, Global News, Ottawa.
Yes, the courts are boring.
Yes, the courts are boring, but however, the health crisis is something we really do need to be concerned about.
And we ran on doing the wrong thing. We started talking about immigration, some of the issues facing children down in the United States by the thousands. Of course, we're going to be talking about children over in Gaza coming up. But we do have to keep running these specials. We've got a whole new channel coming up in September here at Radio Free Canada. I continue to be Darren Howard.
And I continue to be Robert Nisbet.
And we're going to continue bringing the positive stories and the stories that mainstream media just refuses to talk about.
Whether they like it or not.
Okay. Stay tuned. We'll be back after this lack of commercial endorsements.
Oh.
conservatives are spending millions of our tax dollars on ads telling us how great they are at the economy. Meanwhile, the number of Canadians who need food banks is at an all-time high. And the average household debt is also at an all-time high.
A message brought to you by taxpayers who paid for those conservative ads in the first place.